Well, greetings and salutations, and welcome back to the paranormal side of this channel. Before we get into tonight's upload, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. My merch is displayed directly under this video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, and the links to which are also in the description as well. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's paranormal side. Shall we? Today's first experience on the paranormal side. Back in 2011, I was living in a rural town called Monroe, Utah, finishing up my senior year in high school. Monroe is a town of around 2,000 residents and is home to one of the largest mountains in Utah, which my grandparents' house, where I was living at the time, resided at the base of. Our house was on the top of the foothill and overlooked a quaint Monroe Valley. The house itself was about 3,500 square feet, with an entryway/foyer that was approximately 25 feet high, and had a front room on either side of the entryway, and then the main living room and kitchen towards the back of the house facing the mountain. The upstairs had 3 bedrooms, a small library, and then a balcony overlooking the foyer. The basement was the house itself, complete with 3 bedrooms, a living room, and a kitchen. Hopefully this paints y'all a picture of the setting. At this point in my life, my grandfather had been recently diagnosed with cancer. Because we didn't have a hospital in the area with an adequate treatment center, my grandparents temporarily moved to southern Utah, where there was a hospital, and they left me with the house to finish off my high school graduation and part of the summer, May through July. Because of this, my house was notorious for having the boys over, where we'd have parties and then play massive games of hide and seek in the dark. I know it sounds childish, but man, it was fun. I was also keen on having my friends over at all times because being alone in a large home is creepy sometimes, and also because I had several encounters with spirits at one point in my life when I was living with my mother, but that's another story for another time. Anyway, I didn't want to be alone in the house and preferred having people over. Well, right around the middle of June, I had my 2 best friends over, let's call them Jake and Sam, and each of us had a girl over and had picked a room to hang out with them. If you are a religious person, then you probably believe that certain activities are not necessarily inviting of the Holy Ghost. And let's just say my 2 friends and their girls at my place were doing what would be considered uninviting of the Holy Spirit. I was with my best friend's sister and had recently been baptized, so I was not trying to get down with this girl at this point. Well, I hear a door shut, and my 3rd friend, let's call him Jaden, shows up after having gotten down with his gal at her place. Now, I say this because you're heavily religious, then you believe that the Holy Spirit was probably not in the house at all on this particular evening. But if you are not religious, then disregard. We end up sending the girls home, and it's just us boys enjoying our senior summer playing Call of Duty Zombies, which I really wasn't into, but I enjoyed watching my friends play. Around 2:30, and my friend Jake asks if we want to play hide and seek in the dark, but with 2 stipulations. We play the game while Call of Duty Zombies theme song plays throughout the house, and no hiding in the basement because it's pitch black. Looking back to this night, the moon was fairly bright, so your eyes would adjust quickly to the nighttime if you were hiding and seeking upstairs, but not at all downstairs. Jake, Sam, and I were into this scary stuff, but Jaden wasn't the biggest fan of it. Regardless, we decided to play the game to the creepy music, and Jake was the first one as the seeker. Sam, Jaden, and I immediately agreed to be jerks and hide in the basement because we knew it would take Jake forever to find us. So we ended up hiding in one of the bedrooms that was filled with a bunch of wooden chairs. About 10 minutes into the search, we hear him coming down the stairs and he begins talking to someone on the basement stairs. We then hear him yell something to these people, and then he enters the room we're hiding in. He starts moving loads of these chairs and finds us. We all start giggling like girls because we knew we'd broken the rules. We ask him who he was talking to, and he says, "Dude, I thought it was talking to Sam and Jaden, but all of you guys were here, so I have no clue who the silhouettes were on the stairs that were just looking at me and then ran away." Jake loved scary crap, so we shrugged it off like it was typical Jake, trying to make the situation creepier. Anyway, 15 to 20 minutes is a long time for one round of hide and seek, so we decide to just chill in the living room on the main floor while Call of Duty zombie music is playing dimly in the background. After a few minutes of us hanging out, I say, "We should watch a real exorcism video. I bet we can find one online." So I bust out my Mac and started searching for a video on obscure websites and finally find a video. Jake was all for this, but Jaden and Sam were hesitant, understandably so. But I'm me and I don't give a crap, so I turned it on. Interestingly enough, this was shortly after 3 in the morning and was during the witching hour, which I didn't think about until after the fact. So Jake and I are watching this priest just do this random woman with holy water while a priest is chanting Hebrew at her. The girl is strapped to a table and her body's convulsing like the chick from The Ring. I remember watching this video and getting cold chills immediately. But I was mesmerized because I had never seen anything so raw and real of this nature. I couldn't look away. Sam and Jaden tell me to turn it off, and even Jake looks hesitant. This is where things go south quickly. About 20 seconds into the video, I start hearing a knocking noise. Damn, I'm getting cold chills just sharing this. This knocking noise was coming from the master bedroom directly above us in the living room, and it continually was getting louder and louder. Suddenly, it sounds like 4 to 5 people are running and slamming violently into the walls in the room above us. I look at Jake's face because he was sitting next to me, and I can barely make out the look of horror on his face because, again, the lights are turned off everywhere in the house. Then I hear the chandelier in the foyer quake, and at this point, I'm on high alert thinking, oh crap. Despite Jake fooling around all night, he was a relatively goody-goody, and I had never heard him say the F word. But he immediately screams, "Turn it off!" I slam my laptop shut, and all 4 of us run directly to the back door, which are 10 feet away from us. As we are running, we hear a loud thud, 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 as if someone's punching the basement crawling from underneath us. It sounded like someone or something was just trying to tear through the floor beneath our feet. We make it outside during this time, and everything in the house goes silent. No more running from upstairs, no more chandeliers swinging, and no more punching ceiling noises from the basement. It's just us in the middle of the open night sky, torn between trying to look away from the house and towards the mountains, but simultaneously checking to see if something was going to run out of the house. The house was dead quiet, as if nothing had ever happened. We're all gazing into the house from the backyard. We're probably out there for 2 or 3 minutes in complete silence. I had noticed that Jaden was messaging someone frantically when we were outside, and he looked at me and said, "Michelle told me she was in the house with her drill team friends like 10 minutes ago, but told me she was only kidding. So what made the noise in the house?" A little backstory. Everyone in the small town knew my grandparents were away, so it was common for my friends just to pop in the house whenever, especially the drill team gals because they were some of our closest friends. Right after he says this, I look at the other guys, and they're all shedding tears. All three of them were shaking to their core about what had happened. During that 45-second window of pure chaos, we each felt a sense of dread and hopelessness sweep over us. It was 1000% a bad spirit or a few that had just been in that house. Well, I have this house for another 6 weeks, and at some point, I'm going to have to go back in there and sleep in there. So we have to go back in and see what happened. Understandably, they were strongly against the idea, but I felt spiritually strong because of my recent baptism. So I led the way while we single filed walked into the house, while each of their hands were grappling the person's shirt in front of them. We should go to the basement first because it's the scariest and most obvious place where the banging noises were coming from, I say. We slowly creep down the basement steps. I flip on the lights and see that the living room and kitchen were destroyed. The ceiling fan was lying on the ground and at initial glance had looked like it had been ripped straight out of the ceiling. There were broken shards of glass and wood chips from the chaos scattered about the room. Now, I'm thinking, how am I going to explain this to my grandparents? Then we decided to search the rest of the house. The only other unexplainable thing was the master bedroom's closet light was turned on, which we never turned on. That same night, I decided to go to bed in my room while the guys slept downstairs because I was on this spiritual high and felt safe. But my friends each felt like they had an uninvited spirit from their sexual endeavors earlier the night, so they all slept in the living room downstairs. Jake woke up the next morning and had a nightmare about a little girl standing in the living room watching them sleep. But Jake loves scary things, so we never really knew whether he was being truthful about the dream or not. He's an extremely honest person, but he loves overhyping these things, so I never knew what to make of the dream. Fast forward to that weekend, my grandparents came home after my grandfather's radiation treatment because I told them what had happened. They are somewhat religious, but not church fanatics, so they weren't sure what to believe at first, but they knew I was not a liar, and so they took my story as truth. I walked downstairs to the basement with my grandparents, and my grandfather bent to a knee to look at the ceiling fan's wiring and said, "This is cut perfectly across. Someone did this intentionally. This didn't fall out of the ceiling." Since that day, it only furthered my testimony of a God and of an evil. As of 2016, I started to have weekly reoccurring variations of the dream where I'm in the house with a dark presence. I honestly may go to therapy after talking to my wife about it, as it seems to have caused a lingering PTSD, some type of form for me. I'll be grateful for that night because it caused one heck of a story and an everlasting best friendship with those three guys. What are your thoughts? Do you think the silhouettes on the stairs from earlier that night were the same spirits that messed with us, or do you think they were simply shadows? Today's second experience on the paranormal side. One day I decided to go to an old cemetery in San Diego, in a town called Julian. This town was home to miners for gold and citizens that built the town. The average year on the tombstones were 17 to 1800, some ranging from 2000 to 2008. We went out there at around 12 p.m. Just going around asking basic questions, I stumbled on a gated burial date, 1825. I asked if he was there while someone was taking a video and pictures. I got so tired and drained that I felt like we needed to go, and I was being attacked. When we got to my car, we reviewed the photos. What I saw was disturbing. Lights, white, blue, and green, flying all around me. Listening to the audio was even scarier. I heard an old man's deep, crackling voice saying, "Ah, ah, ah, Marissa," and growling noises. I asked to leave immediately after hearing this. Driving away about a fifth of a mile, our car started doing frightful stuff. The radio would turn on and off, the headlights weren't working, our mirrors kept moving dramatically. The lights in the car were turning on and off. We pulled over and we were frightened. It eventually stopped and we drove off, scared and confused as to what just happened. When we arrived home, we could hear voices and banging in the house. We didn't sleep at all that night. I never returned till this day, 8 years later. I still hear the voice, and I hate driving by that cemetery. I often wonder if it has stayed with me. Today's third experience on the paranormal side. I knew a lady who was about 25 years older than me. We were friends through a mutual volunteer organization, and I have been following her happenings since her husband's death. This all started just right about the same time the news of the epidemic started out. This lady had lost her father, not from that, but from old age complications. She also lost another member of her family shortly after, and her pets died suddenly, like months apart. Lastly, her husband was the last to pass, and his death was related to the epidemic. Needless to say, this poor woman had been through a lot and very emotional. So I often gave her comforting words and an ear to listen if she needed it. She lives out in the country and has a pretty old house. I believe her house was built in the late 1800s, and the land goes back even further than that. I know on her property there's a barn and a workshop building not attached to the house. She doesn't live alone, as her eldest live with her. A few months ago, shortly after her husband passed away, she claimed that she senses him at night when she's asleep, like almost that she knows he is there. Sometimes I know grief can make you feel that way, especially being with someone so long. You expect them to be there. Other times she thinks she hears humming from the other part of the house, like if a man was working on something and humming a tune. She had mentioned this to me, thinking maybe she was going crazy, but then her eldest heard it a couple times as well. They went to look for the radio or the TV or some sort of source to explain it. They're also too far from the road and the neighbors, so it could not be an outside source. When she and her friend who was visiting were in her living room, a lamp suddenly turned off. It wasn't the bulb, but it just shut off on its own. Other times, she had mentioned she would come downstairs and the light in the den or the kitchen would be on when it was off the night before. One night, about a month ago, she said she was jolted out of her bed as her TV turned on and was blaring. She didn't turn it or have it loud, and the remote was on her bedside table. Around the same time she mentioned that, she could smell cigar or pipe smoke coming from downstairs, like if someone had just finished smoking. She nor her eldest smoke, but her husband did. Last week she said that she thinks she's losing her mind because she woke up in the middle of the night to what sounded like people talking. She was frozen to her bed, then tried to listen, thinking that maybe people had broken into her home. She said that it was a strange conversational sound, almost like it was coming from the TV, but nothing was on. She turned on the light and walked out of her bedroom upstairs and started walking down the hallway to the stairs, and the sound stopped. She thinks that maybe all of the deaths she experienced have stirred something up in her or her house. I know this has made her a nervous wreck, and she isn't the type to make up any more drama in her life. Today's final paranormal experience. I've had many paranormal experiences throughout my life, but this particular incident is one of the scariest paranormal encounters I've had. Paradise Road, Wisconsin is a haunted rural location where mostly teenagers go for a fun spook and to walk around in some dark woods off the country road. My friends and I, who were about 15 or 16 at the time, decided to go out there one night to try to connect to some spirits. At first, when we pulled up, we waited in the car for a bit, and everyone kept seeing shadows moving in the treetops and darting behind tree trunks. There are no streetlights on this road whatsoever, just darkness all around. When we got out of the car, we all got our flashlights out. Two of us were using handheld battery-operated flashlights, and two of us were using flashlights on our smartphones. We walked deep into the dark woods, jokingly yelling out, "Come get us, demons, we're not afraid," while laughing and mocking the spirits. We got further and further away from the road and into the woods. When this eerie, dark feeling washed over us and we started to hear footsteps and twigs snapping around us, again, we started seeing shadows moving in the treetops. I told myself it's just the lights of our flashlights, but that thick, creepy uneasiness started getting stronger. One of my friends suggested we go back to the car because we were all starting to get seriously unsettled. We heard some twigs snapping behind us again, and out of nowhere, all four of our flashlights died at the same exact time. Not a single word was exchanged as we started bolting through the pitch black forest towards the car, running blindly with our arms up to dodge trees tripping over sticks and getting whacked in the faces with branches. We all made it back to the car out of breath with bruises and scratches all over us. I try to logically explain paranormal experiences, but I have thought about this so many times, and nothing can explain it. My friends and I used to talk about it all the time, and we still have no idea what happened in those woods. We were all 100% convinced we were not alone. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this side of the paranormal of the channel. I enjoyed it. I really love the paranormal. All of it. Whether it be cryptids, ghosts, spirits, haunted objects. Tomorrow I have got some crazy, terrifying Robert the Doll encounters. If none of you are familiar with Robert the Doll, I suggest Googling him. He's not the most pleasant to look at doll. But, if you guys don't know who he is or the lore surrounding him, Google it and give it a little listen, and you'll realize why so many people are petrified. All right, and with that, thank you for always tuning in and all the support, and please be kind to each other, and may the Great Spirit watch over all of us and guide us down that path we call life. Until tomorrow, my friends.